Velkommen til ny dagsorden onsdag 14. juli. Det vanskelig å la være å følge USA fordi det som skjer i USA så avgjørende for vår egen fremtid. I går kveld holdt Biden en tale i Philadelphia, og den var helt følelsesmessig, retorisk helt ute av kontroll, fordi han sammenlignet republikanernes forsøk på å be om ID foran valg med borgerkrigen på midten av 1800-tallet, som kostet 600 000 mennesker livet. Og det en bolsjevikisk taktikk som demokratene bruker, at når de skal ha gjennomført noe som antidemokratisk, så bruker de storslegga mot moderate stemmer som ønsker å bevare systemet, det amerikanske forfatningen bestemmer, nemlig at det skal være checks and balances. Det demokratene holder på med en sentralisering av USA uten sidestykke, fordi det amerikanske systemet bygger på at det 50 delstater med sine egne delstatsforsamlinger, med sitt eget politi, som ansvarlig for valget i sin delstat, mens demokratene brukte pandemien og den unntakstilstanden til å innføre, først til å vinne eller kuppe valget, og nå vil de ha en ny valglov som skåret over samme lest som de brukte 3. november i fjor, og da vil de vinne alle fremtidige valg, rett og slett. Så den beste i dag Steve Bannon, som har en knallanalyse av hva som var hensikten med Bidens tale. Han sier, Bannon har et ordtak eller et motto som sier du må lytte til, prøve å finne ut hva det som signalet og ikke the noise, ikke la deg distrahere av bråk. Og han sier at Bidens tale var et tegn på at Biden og hans administrasjon begynner å bli desperat. Dette vil du aldri høre fra norske medier. De vil kun synge Bidens pris og sitere New York Times og CNN. Og de vil dynge på med mer propaganda, snakke Trump og hans side ned, men i virkeligheten så holder det på å skje noe på grunnfjellet, på grasrota i USA, som et stille opprør mot det oligarkiet som befinner seg i Washington. Da setter vi over til Bannon og hans introduksjon.
Election officials, the entire electoral system, withstood unrelenting political attacks, physical threats, intimidation, and pressure. They did so with unyielding courage and faith in our democracy. With recount after recount after recount, court case after court case, the 2020 election was the most scrutinized election ever in American history. Challenge after challenge brought to local, state, and election officials, state legislatures, state and federal courts, even to the United States Supreme Court not once but twice. More than 80 judges, including those appointed by my predecessor, heard the arguments. In every case, neither cause nor evidence was found to undermine the national achievement of administering the historic election in the face of such extraordinary challenges. Audits, recounts were conducted in Arizona and Wisconsin. In Georgia, it was recounted 3 times. It's clear for those who challenge the results and question the integrity of the election, no other election has ever been held under such scrutiny and such high standards. The big lie is just that, a big lie. The assault on free and fair elections is just such a threat, literally. I've said it before. We're facing the most significant test of our democracy since the Civil War. That's not hyperbole. Since the Civil War. The Confederates, back then, never breached the Capitol, as insurrectionists did on January the 6th. I'm not saying this to alarm you. I'm saying this because you should be alarmed.
Ladies and gentlemen, write this day down. It is Tuesday, the 13th of July, the year of our Lord 2021. Yes, we have forced Joe Biden to go to Philadelphia and to begin to make the defense of the legitimacy of his presidency. This is massive. This is signal, not noise. Do you understand the arguments they had in the Oval Office about should he take the bait and go to Philadelphia because Mastriano and now Corman in the Senate in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is coming for a full forensic audit plus in Philadelphia. They're specifically requesting, and they're going to subpoena records from Philadelphia. And he sees the total meltdown in Fulton County. They understand fully what's going to come up in Maricopa County. Today, Joe Biden had to go to Philadelphia, fly in, and if you're an advisor of the president, you say nowhere on earth should he go. You should never go to Philadelphia. You cannot go to Philadelphia. You cannot be forced to go defend the legitimacy of your election. This is historic. Biden's up there, and you see how he walks through everything. Oh, there's this many audits, this many audits, this many audits, this many audits. Then he ties you directly. You're Confederates, right? You're guilty of trying to split the country, but you're worse because the insurrectionists actually got into the Capitol, and it's all the big lie. Well, Joe, baby, stand by, because you're going to get the receipts. You're going to get the receipts. Rachel Maddow knows they got their hands on the ballots. We've got the receipts, and we're coming. And now it's Arizona. And next it's Georgia, right? And it's coming to Pennsylvania. They understand. Philadelphia, the election, the corrupt, incompetent elections up there, that's Fort Apache. He went to Fort Apache today to make his argument, and we forced him. We forced Joe Biden to have to make the argument for his legitimacy. He had to make the argument for his legitimacy. There's been 9 recounts. There's been all these audits. They're doing all this. And you know, they're not petrified of the full forensic tripartite audit. Do the full forensic audit and recount. Do the recanvass. And remember, Dr. Navarro says it's the canvas, not the count. That's what Merrick Garland's sending the letters out. Criminal penalties for secrecy of the ballots. And, of course, you've got the machines and all the stuff with the machines, and who knows what happens with the machines, but you got that as a free option. But right now, if you look in Arizona, we're going to Boris Epstein on a while to talk about it. You look in Arizona, you look at Garland Favorito and the team down in Georgia, and Garland's going to be here. We forced Joe, suck on this, Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow. We forced Biden to go to Philadelphia and have to make the case for the legitimacy of his presidency. His approval numbers are going to start to implode. Because let me give you a news flash. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, they're coming, and Shapiro's not going to be able to stop it. Not going to be able to stop it. And we know what's going to happen in Georgia, and we know what's going to happen in Arizona. And now we're going to get Wisconsin worked up, right, to do what they should have done. They're the easiest state to prove the lowest hanging fruit. This is historic. Once again, let me repeat, it's not up there about voter rights and voter integrity and the new laws. And don't take the misdirection play of Texas, although that's big. That's still a misdirection play. That's fine. It's important. They imploded the Texas Democrats. They made a huge mistake. They didn't stand and fight. That's important. But that ain't the thing itself. The thing itself is 3 November. The thing itself is 3 November. Texas is very important. That's for the future. That's a rear guard action. The driving column here, the lead tank, right, is from Arizona to Georgia to now the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and they see moderates. They see Karen Fann in Arizona. They see Brandon Beach and Burt Jones and others in Georgia, and now they see Corman back in Mastriano's play. Okay? We forced Joe Biden to go to Fort Apache. And by the way, they're sitting there going, hey, you didn't have the back of the Fulton County guys, you didn't have the back of the Maricopa County guys, and look what's happened. The enemy's inside the wire. We need help. We need air cover. Can you imagine Shapiro's call to the White House to Klain? You better get up here because they rolled us. Their tanks are rolling. They rolled us in Arizona, and they're rolling us right now in Georgia. They're rolling us. You've got to get up here, and we need to know that we've got the White House. We've brought the White House. We've brought Joe Biden's presidency now has to defend his legitimacy. So now it's all about, he admits it. They admitted it by sending him to Philadelphia to defend his presidency legitimacy, and he just went through the mantra. He went through the mantra of which we're going to pick apart and deconstruct. You're going to have to own everything because we're bringing evidence, we're bringing data, we're bringing science, right? Just like we did in Wuhan, just like we're doing on the mask, just like we're doing on CRT, just like we're doing on the vaccines. You can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth. Joe Biden's the illegitimacy of his presidency for the whole world to see. The whole world to see. He laid out the case. Is that the best case you got, Joe? All the different recounts and all the audits that were done and all this phoniness that went on, that's the best you got. You laid out your best case today when your presidency's burning around you. Oh, baby, oh, baby. It better be better than that. Because now you have a riled electorate, and it's not going to stop. This is beyond Donald J. Trump. This is about what was stolen from Trump and the American people in this constitutional republic, but it's beyond President Trump. This is a fight for the direction of this country, and this is a fight of whether we have a constitutional republic or we're just a banana republic. And today in Philadelphia, by the way, can you imagine how bad Philadelphia is going to be when they get into it in the full forensic audit plus Arizona? Remember, Maricopa County is probably the least problem they got. It's Fulton County, and the low-hanging fruit is Milwaukee in Wisconsin. That's pretty straightforward. But the incompetence and corruption of Atlanta and Philadelphia and Detroit is going to be stripped away for the world to see because it's not going to stop. Rachel Maddow told you this 12 weeks ago. She got it. I bet you they're real happy about his defense today. Why did he ever mention it? Why did he go to Philadelphia? What moron sent him to Philadelphia to admit he has to go and defend the presidency himself? Can't send Merrick Garland. That didn't work. That didn't stop us. Merrick, send another letter. You got Bronovich, who's been terrible out there in Arizona. All of a sudden, he's got old-time religion. You know why these establishments got old-time religion? Because they can count. Okay, let's go to, we got John Fredericks and Drew. We got a packed show today. But this is historic. Joe Biden had to defend his illegitimacy. And that's the best argument you got, Joe? And then to finish with the Confederates, do you honestly think this 50 or 55% of the American people think they're Confederates? Do you honestly think that? Do you think that? And you think that's going to sell? It ain't going to sell. We've got the data, we've got the evidence, and we've got the science.
Dette kanskje ikke så lett å få med sånn med en gang for norske ører, men hvis vi lytter litt nærmere, så har det likevel noe å fortelle oss, fordi det Biden sier så vilt. Det så hinsides alle normale sammenligninger at å begynne å si at det at du skal ha ID for å kunne stemme, at det et overgrep, det helt meningsløst. Og 80% av amerikanerne vil at folk skal kunne legitimere seg når de skal stemme. De skjønner jo godt hva dette handler om. De ønsker ikke å ha et valg som kan bli stjert igjen. Og som bandet sier, vi har vunnet kampen om, husk, Wuhan-viruset, kampen om hvor viruset kom fra. For der var det også stonewalling, at det hadde kommet fra et dyremarked og så videre. Nå meningen i opinionen, flertall i USA, at det kom fra Wuhan-laboratoriet, og at det var folk som Fauci og Daszak som var med å utvikle det. De har vunnet den kampen. Samme holdt på å skje med CRT, altså kritisk raseteori, som også folk i ferd med å vende seg mot, slik at den tendensen som fremmer denne revolusjonære ideologien, den krymper, og de på defensiven. Og derfor så dro Biden til Philadelphia, fordi det noen som har sagt til ham, nå må du forsvare at du en legitim president, Men ved å forsvare det på en så overdreven, vanvittig måte, så bekrefter han bare det motsatte, nemlig at han sitter veldig løst, og at han ikke er en legitim president. Dette er jo helt hårreisende å si i Norge, fordi ingen medier går nær 3. november og beskriver all tvilen som er rundt valget. Men det er vår oppgave. Det er derfor vi er her. Og fordi alt henger sammen med alt. Politiske fanger, utnyttelsen av 6. januar til å gjøre det til noe helt annet. Alt dette henger sammen, og det er en kamp om en eksistenskamp i USA. Tucker tok jo også for seg da Bidens tale i går og koblet den til det som skjer i Texas. Vær så god.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. It was a happy day in America, a beautiful July day, and then this afternoon something grave happened. Joe Biden made a very disturbing announcement. This country faces a crisis more dangerous than anything since the American Civil War, Biden said. That is Gettysburg, Shiloh, Antietam, the Walking Dead of Andersonville, the killing fields of the 19th century American South. That's what we're looking at right now, announced the President of the United States. By attempting to pass laws requiring voters to show ID when they vote, Republicans are risking permanent internal division as well as violent conflict. Think we're overstating? Here's what he said.
There's an unfolding assault taking place in America today, an attempt to suppress and subvert the right to vote and fair and free elections. We're facing the most significant test of our democracy since the Civil War. That's not hyperbole. Since the Civil War.
The Civil War? Sound overheated to you? Joe Biden would like you to know this is not hyperbole. Voter ID laws are literally like the Civil War. That is, habeas corpus suspended, state legislatures shut down, hundreds of thousands of Americans dead in fields. That was the Civil War. Biden made it clear that's what he meant. He said it twice. When was the last time a sitting American president gave a speech like this? Well, probably not since the 1860s during the actual Civil War. So it's hard to know how to process it. Even allowing for the dementia, it was a stunningly irresponsible thing for an American leader to say out loud, dangerous even. So on what grounds did Joe Biden say it? What drove him to it? Well, here's the Fort Sumter Biden was referring to. Yesterday, 51 Democrats in the state legislature in Texas left Texas and flew to Washington, D.C. on private jets. They did this in order to deny the Texas legislature a quorum. And then they shut it down. They shut down the democratic process in their state. By leaving Texas, they, in other words, violated their sworn duty to represent their voters, and they committed what amounted to an act of, yes, insurrection. Why? So that Texas lawmakers couldn't pass laws against voter fraud. Laws, by the way, that voters in Texas have said overwhelmingly they want passed. That's democracy. But they're not getting it. The measures that Texas voters would like to see become law include a bill that requires some form of identification, a driver's license, a social security card, something valid and real, for voters who submit mail-in ballots. Another bill would require the Texas Secretary of State to review voter rolls for non-citizens and remove people who are not allowed to vote. So nothing in the bill is radical or without extensive precedent. If you oppose voter fraud, in fact, it's all very obvious and not controversial at all. And that's why it's so popular with voters in Texas. But Democrats in the state don't oppose voter fraud, nor critically do they believe in multi-party politics. So they stopped the entire process cold. Now, preventing lawmakers from making laws, shutting down the vote, would not seem like a defense of democracy. In fact, it would appear to be just the opposite. It would appear to be an assault on the very core of democracy, which is the legislature, the people's house. Even diabolical old Vladimir Putin never attempted to do that. But according to Joe Biden, this time it's necessary. Sometimes you've got to end democracy in order to save democracy. That is, if you're not a racist, requiring people to prove their identity when they cast a vote, said the president, is, quote, an unrelenting 21st century Jim Crow assault. Really? How so? Biden never explained, but he didn't need to. His bootlickers on cable television jumped in to do the talking for him.
Texas Democrats taking a major stand for voting rights. It is a dramatic yet effective move that the National Democratic Party would do well to try and pay attention to.
Leaving their legislative chamber without a quorum was the last best thing they thought they could do to preserve voting rights there and try to defeat the Republican voter suppression bill.
The Texas Democrats fighting back in the face of Republicans' very successful voter suppression drive.
Texas Democrats fleeing their state in a last-ditch effort to block a restrictive new voting law as the GOP is pushing its assault on our most sacred right as Americans, the right to vote.
Who cares about the last guy? What about the first guy? The Republican Voter Suppression Act? How exactly do these bills suppress voting? Precisely. Well, Brian Williams never told us. He just repeated the talking point he was handed. What a brainless shill he has become. So many have. But pay no attention to the dead-eyed news anchor telling you the usual lies. No, consider instead the heroes of modern Texas, the people saving the vote by stopping the vote, preserving democracy by ending it. Here's a picture of them on a charter bus to the private airfield, the FBO, as they say in private equity. Now, they may be smiling in the picture, but it's only to mask the pain inside. They may be drinking Miller Lite, but it's not in celebration. No, it's in solidarity with the campesinos and campesinas around the state of Texas, on whose behalf they were drinking those beers. The people who may not be actual citizens of the United States, who may not speak our language or follow our laws, but who still somehow have the God-given right to choose your government for you. The right, in other words, to vote Democrat whenever they want. So it was an intense moment on that bus. Picture Che Guevara sailing into Havana Harbor on the Granma to bring the revolution to its bloody climax. And it only got more intense when the charter buses arrived at the FBO. One Texas lawmaker, a childlike former teacher called James Tallarico, tweeted about the dangers from his private jet. Quote, "Just landed in Memphis on our way to D.C. Thank you all for your well wishes. We left behind our families, our livelihoods, and our beloved Texas. But our sacrifice," sorry, can't read it with a straight face, "but our sacrifice is nothing compared to the sacrifices brave Americans have made throughout history to protect the sacred right to vote." Those sacrifices included drinking Miller Lite on a private plane over Memphis. It was moving. Now, we don't have a lot of photos from within that private plane, just like we don't have a lot of paintings from Washington's crossing of the Delaware. Sometimes you have to imagine it. But we do have this documentary evidence, this shot. And as you can see, those people are terrified. They're not taking this trip on a private plane for themselves. They're doing it for democracy, which paradoxically they've just suspended. Revolutions are full of bitter little ironies like that, but we learn to live with them in the name of the greater good. Now, you may be wondering, how did all those lawmakers get on that plane? Can you just walk on a plane now? Doesn't that require some form of photo ID, a racist ID card? And by the way, wear their masks. Aren't you required by federal law to wear a mask on an airplane? Sure, you are in normal times, but when there's a revolution in progress, normal rules are suspended. Che Guevara never wore a surgical mask. His rifle was his ID card. And so with these slightly chunky revolutionary heroes. Now, once the brigade from Texas finally arrived in the capital city, Washington, they weren't met with artillery fire or Hessian sharpshooters. No, something more daunting. There were television cameras awaiting their arrival. How did they handle this? With the power of song.
We will overcome. We will overcome someday. Deep in our heart, I do believe we shall overcome today.
What happens when a cliche becomes so time-worn that it folds in on itself like a cliche black hole and sucks all of reality into itself? That's what you just saw. Now, but to the untrained eye, the footage we just played might seem a little bit self-aggrandizing. It might seem like those lawmakers may be the only ones on earth who appreciate their own bravery and the sound of their own voices. But that's not true. There are still other people in this country who recognize how truly heroic these political leaders are. One Texas lawmaker, Gene Wu, insisted that his fans couldn't wait to see him when he got to Washington. Quote, "Landed safely in D.C. It was wonderful to randomly run into people who recognize me and applauded what we are doing." Now, none of the people who are vigorously applauding Gene Wu appear visible in that tweet, but you can rest assured, Mr. and Mrs. America, they're out there. They're just at a camera shot. Now, presumably, Gene Wu's many fans, his legions of fans, were also applauding as he sat eating lunch in the airport dining area. Wu documented exactly what he ate in a follow-up tweet, just for the historical record. Quote, "My first meal as a fugitive. Delicious." At some point in the modern era, it becomes a little hard to distinguish between hero and clinical narcissist, star of TikTok videos, state legislator. But whatever, those distinctions don't mean anything. Gene Wu is a hero for eating those croutons. How big a hero? Well, Gene Wu himself wouldn't say. He's a man of modesty, obviously. But another representative from the state of Texas, a fellow called Trey Martinez Fisher, spelled it out for us. According to Trey Martinez Fisher, can that name be real? We're going with it. Gene Wu eating salad in an airport is very much like the civil rights leaders of old, crossing the bridge at Alabama, taking truncheon blows to the head. You watch.
This is the risk that we take to stand up for democracy. I mean, we are talking about voting rights here. There were people who were beaten with clubs and attacked by dogs, and people were murdered to protect the sacred rights. So this threat and this finger pointing by the governor, is not going to intimidate all of us. We are strong and united, and we want to bring, voting rights reform to this country.
Edmund Pettus Bridge, Chipotle, same idea, different era. As you'd expect, Kamala Harris wants in on the action. She's been protesting for civil rights since a child growing up in Canada. Sorry, America. Since 2 years old, she's been demanding freedom, as she said. So she's just announced she's going to meet with these freedom fighters sometime this week. The governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, meanwhile, won't be there. He has promised to arrest them and bring them back to the State House if they ever return to Texas. So are they coming back to Texas? No, they're not till the session's over. So effectively, these freedom fighters, these modern Che Guevaras, these crossers of the Edmund Pettus Bridge / Chipotle, have shut down Texas's democratically elected government. That's how you know they're defending democracy, down in the private planes.
Ja, for å oppsummere det dette handler om, 52 medlemmer av representantenes hus i Texas likte ikke den nye loven om ID ved valg, så når de var i mindretall og ikke kunne stoppe den, så forlot de kammeret slik at det ikke ble beslutningsdyktig, og tok et privatfly til Washington og la seg inn på et luksushotell der. Og hvor kom pengene fra som betalte for dette privatflyet? Jo, det var en libanesisk hedgefondmilliardær som bor i Nevada. Så mye for den lille mann. De som sier de vil ivareta demokratiet, altså de som ødelegger det, som Tucker ganske riktig sier, fordi demokratene kan tillate seg hva som helst. De importerer millioner av nye velgere og skaper det man kaller facts on the ground, og så stiller de både republikanerne og amerikanere overfor et fait accompli, et fullbyrdet faktum, at ja, se her, nå må det selvfølgelig de få lov til å stemme, for de har kommet til landet og har krav på det. Det planen, og det vil gjøre USA til en ettpartistat. Og da tror jeg at det lurt å pay attention til det som skjer der borte, fordi hvis dette skulle bli virkelighet, så det goodbye demokrati også i Vest-Europa. Det en illusjon å tro at Vest-Europa skulle forsvare friheten noe mer enn det Amerika i stand til. Og samtidig med dette her så det tiltagende lovløshet. Det ser ut som om Sør-Afrika nå har lært av George Floyd og BLM-bevegelsen, fordi tilhengerne til Summe fant seg ikke i at han ble dømt til 15 års fengsel, og de går da amok i gatene og får med seg en pøbel som plyndrer varesentre, shoppingsentre og setter fyr på fabrikker. Og dette pøbelveldet, det et trekk vi ser gå igjen nå i både tredje verden og i Vesten. som i USA, og Heather McDonald, som har skrevet boken The War on Cops, hun sier at det aldeles ikke slutt på anarkiet i USA, det voksende. Og politifolkene slutter. De søker pensjon, det vanskelig å få nye rekrutter, for hvorfor skal de stille seg i harm's way og bare få problemer hvis de prøver å opprettholde lov og orden. Så vi skal først se noen klipp fra Sør-Afrika, og så så det intervjuet med, ja, her kommer det intervjuet med fra Sør-Afrika først. Vær så god.
The nation of South Africa appears to be in significant trouble tonight. Anarchy across the country in the cities and outside the cities. For more what's happening right now, we go to Kenita Hunter. She is a political editor at News 24 in South Africa. She joins us from Johannesburg. Kenita, thanks so much for joining us tonight. So we're experiencing this mostly on social media. People are seeing videos of what's happening in your country. Describe what's going on right now, if you would.
Well, there has been 3 days of unrelenting looting and violence in areas around Johannesburg, as well as Durban and surrounding areas, which you see started as protest against the jailing of former President Jacob Zuma. This was on Wednesday last week. By Thursday, there were sporadic incidences of violence, but over the weekend, this intensified to what President Cyril Ramaphosa has now called a coordinated criminality. Dozens of malls, shopping centers, and now even warehouses and factories have been completely looted by thousands of people across the country in around these two major economic hubs. What you see is the police completely overburdened, unable to stop these violent and looting scenes that unfolded in the country, with the president having to call in the South African National Defence Force on Monday to reinforce efforts by police. There's been 1,200 people that have been arrested, but 72 people have lost their lives so far.
So from this perspective, you see, we're playing video of it on the screen right now, of entire shopping malls being emptied, office buildings being looted, as you said, factories burned. It looks like a big part of the economy of the country is being tonight. Thank you so much.
Ja, dette har jo ikke Sør-Afrika råd til. Ikke engang USA hadde råd til vedvarende anarki. Og det de enda mindre hadde råd til, det at politiske myndigheter instruerte politiet om å slippe ut voldsmennene uten at det kom på rullebladet deres at de hadde deltatt i voldelige opptøyer. Og når staten blir kriminell, eller altså deltager, medvirker til kriminalitet, så skjer det en erodering av lov og orden og folks rettsbevissthet. Og lovlydige borgere blir forsvarsløse. Og det den mørke siden av denne BLM-bevegelsen i USA i fjor, som da har fått en representant i Det hvite hus. Og legg merke til, Sør-Afrika veldig viktig for balansen i Afrika, men det ikke bare der det uro, også på Cuba det uro, men der jo Biden-administrasjonen mer ambivalent, fordi de har politiske sympatier med diktaturet. Både Obama, Carter var busser med Castro, så nå sier jo de amerikanske myndigheter til kubanerne, ikke legg ut på båter, for de vil ikke ha dem. Og dette jo så provoserende for den store kubanske diasporaen i særlig Florida. Vi skal se det intervjuet med Heather McDonald, som en veldig flink dame, snakke om tiltagende lovløshet i USA. Og demokratene nekter å ta ansvar for politikken. Skal vi se. Og dette skjer ved høylys dag, at ungdommer knuser ruta på en bil som står og venter foran rødt lys, og hopper inn og tar varer og går igjen. Eller det er såkalte flashmobs. Det kommer en gruppe ungdommer og stormer en butikk, og på noen sekunder så har de tømt hyllene og er borte, og politiet har ikke sjans.
Well, Joe Biden promised that once Trump was out of office, things would calm down in America. So what did we get? We got more murder and depraved crime. That's what we got. In a video released today from New York City, a man received second-degree burns after being doused by scalding liquid. The suspect laughed as he ran away. In Oakland, California, a thief smashed a car window, climbed in, stole a woman's purse and backpack, all while she was stuck in traffic in the middle of the day. And in Washington, D.C., 3 young girls, ages 12, 14, and 16, were arrested for an attempted carjacking after allegedly using a taser on the driver. Only one of them is now facing charges, yet another example of the scourge of light touch policing. But instead of pushing a course correction here, Biden is letting the agitators drive the conversation. Now, if that continues, it won't take much to reignite the bloody riots we saw last summer, especially with the rhetoric about voting that we just covered in the previous segment. Joining me now is Heather McDonald, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, author of The War on Cops that predicted much of this. Now, Heather, on the Laura Ingraham podcast today, you said that you believe we're already seeing, I think you said, slow motion riots going on across the country. Explain that, please.
Well, you have massive looting going on. You have organized gangs that are running into stores, grabbing all the merchandise they can get, escaping in getaway cars. You have the assaults on Asians, the assaults on elderly, the assaults on Jews, mostly from people from the inner city. None of this is being acknowledged by the Democratic Party. And so you have now really a breakdown of law and order. The press can't cover it. They're not covering it. But on a daily basis, the degree of assaults that I believe are really hate crimes, but you're not allowed to talk about it when they're a certain race of offender, is going on that is a slow motion riot. You have anarchy is coming into our cities now, thanks to the rhetoric of the Democrats, thanks to the constant impugning of the police by candidate Biden and by President Biden that is causing them to back off, and criminals and lowlifes now feel emboldened.
Well, then you have Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot. She's suddenly kind of welcoming federal crime prevention help now that, well, a Democrat's president. Watch.
The federal government will be making an announcement in the short term. I had a brief conversation with the president about it last week, so I'm anxious to get those resources up and operational here. What we do not welcome is the deployment of unnamed federal special secret agents. We are not going to allow democracy to be hijacked by the federal government.
So the study in contrast, what she said in July 2020 versus what she said today and yesterday, that bring in the resources. Where are these resources going to go, Heather?
Well, consistency is not the Democrats' strong point. It's too late. Biden and Lori Lightfoot can want to refund the police all they want. They're not going to be able to do it. We are in a recruiting crisis. People have been leaving, officers have been leaving in droves. Retirements are up 45%, resignations are up 18%, and police officers are telling everybody they know, don't even think of joining this profession. Ambush assaults on officers are up 91% this year. Officers are cursed at, resisted arrest every time they get out of their cars now on a regular basis. And so the Democrats are furiously backpedaling and trying to present themselves as the pro-police party. It's not going to work. It's not going to fool the American public. And it's not going to bring real substance and law and order back to the city unless they start retracting their long history of anti-cop statements and say, actually, we believe the cops are doing the best they can. They are the police, they are the government agency most dedicated to protecting black lives.
Heather, the videos are disturbing. These stories get worse and worse. I think there's blood on their hands. They started this, and it continues. Heather, thank you.
Legg merke til at det ingen I Norge, eller I Vest-Europa heller, som tør å si det som Laura Ingraham sa om dagens politikere. De har blod på hendene, og med det mente hun selvfølgelig Demokratene og Hvite hus, og deler av det republikanske partiet. Fordi the chicken comes home to roost, sier amerikanerne. Ansvaret må plasseres der det hører hjemme, de som har styrt politikken. Og Biden kommer til å få en skikkelig smell neste år ved kongressvalget, men der sier Laura, nå posisjonerer de seg for å kunne si at valget ble stjålet, fordi vi fikk ikke gjennomført vår egen valglov. De vil si det var suppression of votes, og så vil de fortsette med en ny syklus av protester. Og norske medier kommer bare til å dilte etter og gjenta det de, som en papegøye, det de sier. Nå skulle vi ta vi kan ta et lite klipp over til Skandinavia og Norge og Sverige, fordi det en parallell, og det derfor jeg snakker så mye med USA, fordi der blir politikken avkledd. Det en grunn til at politiet så maktesløse og så svake, og det at politikerne sa vi skal lage et nytt samfunn, vi har importert nye mennesker, og dere får ikke lov å si noe stygt om dem, for da ødelegger dere vårt utopiske prosjekt. Og folk en blanding av godtroende, trege, og lar seg skremme, fordi det det mer og mer nå, at folk blir skremt når de ser volden, for hvor skal de henvende seg? Og det skrekkhistorier, seksuelle overgrep fra Danmark, var det altså en gruppevoldtekt, en relasjon til en 14-åring med en kurdisk-syrisk asylsøker. I begge tilfeller 14-årige jenter. Og et tredje tilfelle hvor en dame ble kastet ut på Valby stasjon utenfor København, rett foran S-toget og holdt på å bli drept. Det var en jordaner som hadde kommet på familienforening for et år siden eller to, og blitt kastet ut av kona, og nå levde hjemløs i København. Hvor mange skal miste livet, bli lemlestet eller voldtatt av slike mennesker, som politikerne overhodet ikke tar ansvar for, og de gir heller ikke politiet midler og rettigheter til å gjøre noe med det. Dette dette anarki, det krypende anarki, og det kommer bare til å vokse, og det kommer til å få store sosiale konsekvenser at folk flytter ut av byene. Nå ikke det så lett i Danmark som så lite, fordi der har du problemene over nesten hele Danmark. Men de som bestemmer, de tar ikke S-tog om kvelden. De bor ikke i områder hvor de blir slått ned. Så de kan late som, de kan spille uanfektet enn så lenge. Men det begynner å prege også deres rike villa-kvarter. Det ikke trygt noe sted. Og i Sverige så var det denne forferdelige historien om to menn på 66 år, som de hadde skulle feire at lockdown var over, og hadde tatt et par øl på byen, og går hjem i 1:30 om natta, og så blir de overfalt. Og det ikke noe vanlig overfall. Det var, som den ene sier, for de ble nesten slått ihjel, det var fordi de hadde glede av å knuse oss. Det var det som var motivet. Altså at de fikk stjert en gullklokke og noe sånt, det er underordnet gleden ved å forvolde, bruke grov vold mot forsvarsløse mennesker. Men det vil jo ikke politikerne snakke om, og de tror jo at folk ikke får det med seg, men det gjør de faktisk. Og vi skal sørge for at folk får det med seg, fordi dette som man sier på amerikansk, this cannot stand. Dette kan vi ikke finne oss i. Nå skulle jeg også sagt noe om 6. januar og de politiske fangene i USA, men det er et litt større tema, så jeg sier, nå slutter vi der, og så ser dere at alt dette henger i hop, og det handler om ideologi, at noen ønsker å påtvinge oss et utopisk samfunn, og bruker oss som et laboratorium, et eksperiment for deres ideer. Og det eksperimentet må vi få slutt på, før det ødelegger oss. Takk for i dag, dere. Ikke heng med huet. Bruk det heller, og støtt dokument 63 89 41. Takk for i dag.
Husk å vips, ellers så kommer klimatrådet og tar deg, og jorden går under.